I'm Alyssa Lane, and welcome to the LifeKraft podcast. LifeKraft is passionate about helping you live your everyday life better by sharing inspiration, awareness, and tools to enable you to create a fulfilling life. On this episode of the LifeKraft podcast, we have Hetty the Entrepreneur. Hetty is a business and monetization guru from South Africa who is inspiring people worldwide through her own business journey and coaching. In this episode, she shares more about her journey growing up, starting her own businesses, and what her own life lessons have taught her about being a successful entrepreneur. She shares valuable tips for entrepreneurs to go to the next level of business, why it's so important to step out of your comfort zone, the importance of having a mentor, and so much more. Are you ready to be inspired? Then tag at the LifeKraft and at Hetty_the_entrepreneur and share a screenshot with us of your favorite takeaway from this episode. Hetty, welcome to the LifeKraft podcast. It's an absolute honor to be able to speak with you today. You are a formidable woman, and in only researching you, I have learned so much. And following you on social media, I have actually applied those things to my own business. And I just want to tell everyone that what Hetty says works, because I have put to action just a couple of the tips that she gives so freely on her social media and YouTube channels, and it's made such an impact on my life and the way that I view my business. So welcome, Hetty. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so thrilled. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
I'm really looking forward to our audience getting to know you. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, how you started your business, and how that has evolved into the amazing business and monetization coach that you are today.
So I was born in Russia. My mother is South African and my dad is from Ghana. And they both met at university in Russia. So I was born in Russia, and I've lived quite a colorful life in the sense that I've had the privilege to live in multiple countries as a result of the line of work that my parents are in. I've lived in Ghana, I've lived in the UK, I've lived in South Africa, Egypt, Sweden. And that's really been fantastic because it's allowed me to really be a global citizen, and it's given me a bit of a world perspective, which I think is quite an added advantage, because then you're able to kind of see a global perspective in terms of how one can build their life. And that's truly exciting for me.
Wow. That is the ultimate type of upbringing to have, because I think that gives you such a broad perspective on not only your potential, but networking and how to have a business that actually accommodates more people than just your little world. I know growing up myself, as soon as I started venturing out and started traveling, my whole perspective on life changed, and the impact that I could make changed as well. So you went to the University of Pretoria, and after that, you started a business with your husband. I'd love for you to dive into that, because I love the story of how you guys started out in your spare bedroom and how you really pivoted your business in the beginning until you found one that really worked for you.
Absolutely. So, my husband and I got married in 2010, and that was such a phenomenal year because that was the year of the World Cup. Philip was here. Everybody was so excited. There was just a beautiful energy and mood within the country. And that was the year that we got married. So we were full of excitement, anticipation, just planning our future, and really quite hopeful. And I remember quite clearly, we were actually on honeymoon, and we were thinking to ourselves, okay, well, what kind of life do we want to build for ourselves? How do we see our future? And we really felt that we want to spend as much time together as we can. And, at the time, both of us were working in corporate. And while we both did love our jobs, it was really highly demanding, lots of hours, etc. And we realized that if we truly want to spend a lot of time together, then continuing within corporate would not be the vehicle that would actually help us to realize that objective. And so we then decided, well, let's start a business. Let's become entrepreneurs. Let's see what we can be able to build together so that we can spend as much time together as possible. And that's where the idea of building our business started. And we started with P&H Boutique. And that really, initially, we were dealing with Egyptian cotton shirts. And one of the reasons for that is that my parents were living in Egypt at the time. There were diplomats there. We would go to Egypt often. And we saw an opportunity in that. But over a while, even though the business did well, we love African print. We're always wearing African print clothing. The beautiful, vibrant fabrics. People always ask us about it. And we're like, actually, this is what comes naturally to us. We should rather transition to what is more authentic to who we are. And as a result, we actually transitioned the business into African print clothing. So I often say to business owners that just begin and start your business, because what you start with is not necessarily what you're going to end up with, but your business can only transition and bloom into the fullness of what it's meant to be only when you actually do begin.
Yes, and I think it's so important. I'd love to dig into, firstly, when you say that it naturally started progressing into a different business, you guys pivoted to see the natural thing that would work for you. You talk about the comfort zone a lot. And I've noticed in my own life as a coach, there is a big difference between where you are naturally really talented, where things just come naturally, like if you're a great speaker or you're a great singer or you're a great writer, that comes naturally to you compared to the comfort zone. And sometimes people mix those two up. And I've noticed that in business as well. You want to stay in your comfort zone and you just feel like, well, it comes naturally to me. This is easy for me to do, but that's not necessarily what's going to move the needle for you. So how do you differentiate between what comes naturally to you and what is necessary for your business, so you might have to move out of your comfort zone?
So here is the thing, is that in any instance where you want to grow, whether it's in your business, your life, your relationships, your health, you have to step out of the comfort zone, because it's the very same comfort zone that led you to the point at which you are at right now. And it's really interesting, because at some point, that was also not the comfort zone. That was also outside of the comfort zone. It's just that you became accustomed to it, you became used to it, and then it became comfortable. So any new stage of life or business requires us to completely step out. Now, often at times, what people say they're used to doing, or it comes naturally to them, is actually a learned habit. You've become accustomed to it because you've been doing it and reiterating it several times. So, for example, when you start off in a new job, it's all overwhelming. Everything is new. But after a couple of months, you're able to do it in your sleep. Then you find yourself saying, oh, but this just comes naturally to me. It's not that it comes naturally to you. You've learned a new skill and you've been able to master that new skill. So we can always grow, we can always expand to a new and higher level if we allow ourselves the space and opportunity to actually learn something new.
That is so powerful. There you guys have it. It feels like a mic drop moment. We can stop the entire podcast right there and everyone can just go and do that. And they will have a measure of success they've never had. I absolutely agree with that. Now you say, ideas and plans at the beginning of your business doesn't mean that's where you'll end up. And I think so many people felt that with 2020. With everything that has happened, so many people have had to pivot the way that they look at themselves. Some people had to become entrepreneurs when they were actually just workers and employees for their entire lives. So I want us to dig into that. What is a key component to the failure or a success of a starting business? Because so many people have had to pivot in 2020 and realize that where they started might not be where they have to go right now.
I honestly, truly believe within the depths of myself that the key component to business success is agility. The ability to be able to transform and move with changing circumstances and environment. So what often happens when we start out our new business or our new job, whatever it is that we may be doing, is that we've got a preconceived idea and notion in our head of how everything should pan out. And so because we've cast that idea in stone, it's become solidified and cemented. So even when the environment is communicating with us that, hang on a minute, this isn't going to work. Instead of continuing on the straight path, you actually need to take a sharp right. We are resistant to listening to that voice and listening to our internal GPS, because we have cast the idea in stone and we have cemented it. And often at times, our businesses and our plans do work. They do work. That's what gives us the faith and the hope that we can continue to grow. So if you looked at a Musica, there was a time when the business model was thriving and it was absolutely great. If you look at a Nokia or BlackBerry and, BBM, there was a time when it was absolutely thriving and it made sense. The problem comes in when there's a change in circumstance, when what was once a novice idea has now become the norm. How ready are you to be able to become agile to the changing environment and circumstances so that you can remain cutting edge? Right? So when WhatsApp came in, it completely overtook BBM. So instead of holding on to that cemented idea, you actually need to cast those stones aside and develop something new. But if you are unable to do that, if you're unable to be agile and fluid, then it ends up coming at the cost of your business. And that's why you've got businesses like Musica closing down, Nokia not existing, BBM dying out. It's not because they lacked innovation. They were actually quite innovative in the beginning, but that innovation now became a comfort zone when that innovation now became normalized. So what is innovation today will be normal tomorrow. Do you have the agility to be able to respond and to continue to be a trailblazer?
And there are so many examples of that. If you look at Blockbusters and all of those video stores, and then streaming came.
Exactly.
So I want to ask you, because I love the story of yourself and your husband setting goals for yourself, actually thinking about what type of life you want to have, and then fashioning, crafting your life around that. That's why we made the name LifeKraft. You can craft the type of life that you want, but not a lot of people take the time. And then there were people who took the time, dear people that I've talked to, that crafted their life, they set their goals, and then something like 2020 happens, and they didn't know how to pivot from there. Where does goal setting come in when life feels so unknown? When you can't really even make an appointment in 3 weeks' time because you don't know whether you'd be able to go or not. You can't set traveling goals. Your business model might change again between now and 2025 because there are so many changes happening at the moment. Do you still think that goal setting is important? Have you changed how you set goals now? And what advice do you have for our listeners in goal setting and still holding on to those dreams?
I think that goal setting is one of the lifelines that life has afforded us.
Wow.
And I think that it's one of the few things that remain constant, whether there's a pandemic or not, whether there's a recession or not, whether you're in a first or a third world country. Goal setting is one of those things that you can be able to have, that you can implement in your life, whether you live in a shack or a mansion. I think that one of the things that 2020 has taught us is to really look and come back to return to self. So one of the ways in which goal setting has fundamentally changed for me is that in the past, when I would goal set, I would do so based on what I assumed should be the natural progression of life. So I've opened one store, therefore the natural progression is a second store. So I used logical thinking to determine my goals. One of the major things that have actually changed for me in 2020 is that my goal setting is now linked to my own internal dialogue.
Wow.
So one of the things I realized is that it's important to continually have conversations with yourself, honest conversations with yourself. I read a beautiful saying, I believe it comes out of the Bible, where it says, to thine own self be true. So you can perception manage as much as you want to the outside world, but to thine own self be true. So having those conversations with yourself to say, look, my business is actually not performing well. I'm not breaking even. Perhaps my staff count is actually too much. To be honest with you, I am making money in this particular vehicle, but it's actually not giving me satisfaction. I don't feel that burning passion within myself. When we begin to have these realistic and honest conversations with ourselves, we can then have the bravery to then ask ourselves, if time and money was not a factor, what would I want my life to look like? And then you can begin that exercise of writing that down. So for me, for example, if time and money was not a factor, I would love to be able to work anywhere in the world. I want to be able to impact lives. And I want to be able to run a business where I don't necessarily have to carry physical stock and inventory because I feel that it would limit me. So once I had written those three things down, I was then able to say, all right, Hetty, what natural skills and talent were you assigned with at birth that comes naturally to you, that you can use as a vehicle to be able to achieve these three things? And that's how I became a business and monetization coach, because I know business, I know the principles, and I know monetization. But in order for me to get to that point, I had to have that internal dialogue with myself. Now, this is very difficult to do, Melissa, because the truth of the matter is those conversations often at times bring us to the point of realization that actually the way my life is currently set up has to be completely undone in order for me to be able to live in alignment with my internal dialogue. And that's why we often distract ourselves and don't have those conversations with ourselves, because it might mean closing down your business. It might mean letting some staff go. It might mean moving from offline to online. And it definitely means coming out of our comfort zone. But when we have those conversations, it allows us to, as you say, craft a life that has meaning and purpose, so that we can be able to not only earn money, but do it through doing exactly what we love, and that actually does come naturally to us.
That is so powerful. That you can still have those goals. And I know it's so scary. I've been through it a couple of times in my life where I got to the realization that, yes, like Elizabeth Gilbert says in Eat, Pray, Love, she actively participated in every single aspect of the life she was living at that moment, and she didn't like it. But it's powerful. That awareness is powerful. You can only start from that point in any area of your life.
Absolutely.
But then pivoting and learning the new skills necessary. And I know there are a couple of skills that it feels like really, it's overwhelming to people. I know a lot of people, there are usually a couple of categories. So people who have not started a business at all and realize they need to. They need to use their skills that they have. They need to gain new skills to craft a new life for themselves. Then there are those that have a small business, might have had to close down. They might have had to let go of staff, etc., etc. But what I started realizing is there's a whole new movement when it comes to entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Whether you've had a business or whether you're starting a business. And Gary Vee was one of the first people that changed my idea of what it means to be an entrepreneur. Because the old books I read, I always thought, oh Lord, I never want to be an entrepreneur. It sounds terrifying. And then I listened to Gary Vee and he made me realize, girl, you've always been an entrepreneur since you were really young. And then I listened to you and you made it sound so simple and easy to understand. The difference between just being an artist or being an entrepreneur, the difference between having a business and being an entrepreneur. So I'd love for you to get into that definition, your definition of what entrepreneurship is, and maybe mention one or two skills that you feel is necessary now for entrepreneurs to cultivate.
Absolutely. So I often say that, a business owner is not necessarily an entrepreneur, and there really is a difference. Often at times, especially during this particular season in the world where people are looking for additional streams of income or they're just looking to really survive, they end up opening a business as a means to an end. So it isn't in alignment necessarily with their purpose. It isn't something that they would have chosen as a first choice. And those people often become business owners. They are the difference between, let's say, a subsistence farmer and a commercial farmer, right? So a lady, for example, or an individual, for example, that is selling tomatoes at the corner of the street, they are earning a legitimate income for themselves and their family. So they are using that tool to be able to survive, etc. Yes, they own their own small business, and it's a subsistence business that operates from hand to mouth. An entrepreneur, on the other hand, is a problem solver and an innovator. So entrepreneurs take their skills, their knowledge, their talent and their expertise, and they solve problems, they innovate, and they actually make the world a better place. So when we talk about disruptive businesses, when we talk about the world changing from BBM to WhatsApp, from Musica to streaming services, we are talking about the legacy of entrepreneurs. And it's something that is so exciting because when we actually see the value of entrepreneurs, we actually realize the importance of nurturing that talent, because it is something that actually makes the world a much, much better place.
Do you have any books that have made an impact on your life when it comes to entrepreneurship and really refining it as a skill?
Absolutely. In fact, both of Ian Furr's books I absolutely love. He's a fantastic South African story, the founder of the Sorbet Group, and they've got over 200 franchises throughout the country. I've been privileged enough to have him as a mentor, and I find him to be really relatable. And the reason why I recommend both of his books is because it's important for us to have references that are relatable, references within our operating environment to give us the belief that we too can be able to do it. So often at times we like to look abroad and we like to look in environments where the landscape and operating environment is completely different to ours. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that because it gives you a global perspective. But I also like to look within our own backyard because that gives us something relatable that we can be able to aspire to. So I absolutely love Ian Furr and both of his books. I also love the book, The Slight Edge. Now, what I love about The Slight Edge is that it teaches you the daily consistent principles that one should apply in their lives in order to get a cumulative effect and a slight edge, right? So let's say, for example, you decide that, all right, this is the year that Hetty is finally getting into shape. I'm going to hit the gym. I'm going to be so serious about this. Now, day one, you're feeling all the aches and pains without any progress. Day two, day three, the same thing. But over time, through consistency, the cumulative effect of that is that one day, perhaps 6 months later, you wake up and all of a sudden a new, improved and different Hetty is looking at me. So when did that improvement actually happen? Was it on day one? Was it on day 30? Was it on day 90? It wasn't actually on any of those days. It's that cumulative effect of consistency built up over time that tips us over the edge. And that's what the Slight Edge is about. It helps you to develop that mindset to consistently keep going at it every single day, despite any evidence that things are changing.
I love that so much. I'm going to get that book. I've never read that book. When you think back on your amazing journey as an entrepreneur, as a businesswoman, as a monetization coach, what was one of your biggest failures? And what did you learn from that moment?
Wow, that is such a fantastic question. That is really, truly such a fantastic question. I think, honestly speaking, one of the biggest mistakes that I think I've ever made within business, and it's one of those wonderful lessons that keeps coming back to remind us to remain centered in it, is the magic of thinking big. Every single time that I found myself either stumbling within business, stumbling within relationships, stumbling within how I show up in the world, it is because I have chosen to minimize myself and to remain small, when in actual fact, for all of us, our purpose within life is to be big and to be bright and to be a chandelier. And every single time perhaps a business transaction hasn't gone well, it's because I arrived not as the fullness of who I am. And so it's so important to understand one's value and to be able to respectfully communicate that from the very beginning, because that also sets the tone for the rules of engagement. It sets the tone for your pricing. So your pricing is a reflection of how you view yourself. So all of these things are intertwined. And every single time I have dishonored myself by arriving as smaller than I am, it has always shown itself in the consequences thereof.
We do that. We do it so easily. And there are so many different reasons for that. You being a coach, you'll know that people love seeing themselves differently than they are. And it's a coach's responsibility to be able to see that uniqueness that is just you and help you bring it out. Being a Black woman in business can be tough. And I have a lot of friends, and I've heard a lot of stories, and I've seen and read and tried to have an understanding in regards to that. But I'll never have the understanding that you'll have, because we can't be what we've never seen. We've never experienced that. If there is a little girl listening, or if there's a young woman listening, or if there is someone in business and she's been knocked down a couple of times because she is a Black woman in this day and age, in this culture, that has a big dream, that doesn't want to play small anymore, how does she find her value? Because I know it's so difficult. You say that we must know our value, but it's so difficult to know your value if you've been undervalued and been seen as less than you are for years and years. How will you help her? What advice would you give her if she's listening today?
You know, it's quite interesting, Melissa, because that's just absolutely so true. There's so many people who have been raised and born into environments that doesn't actually teach us about our self-worth, that doesn't teach us to unearth our natural born talent, that doesn't teach us about all of the different life principles that can actually help you to navigate these waters. And one of the things that I would advise, honestly, any individual who is seeking more, who is seeking greater, is to align yourself with individuals that are on the path to where you want to go. And there are so many different ways that you can do that. So first of all, a person listening to this podcast already has made a conscious decision to invest in themselves. And what you learn from the podcast through implementation in your life, literally the universe rewards you for that. The books that you read, the television programs that you watch, what you choose to follow on social media and consume, and also raising up your hand to say, I am here. Aligning yourself with a coach, a mentor, an individual that has walked the path before you. Because what that does is it begins to provide you with a human GPS along the path that you wish to take. So when you align yourself with somebody who's walked the entrepreneurship journey, or walked the career journey, or walked the health and wellness journey, you are now saying, here, hold my hand and take me along with you. So it allows you to also not make certain expensive mistakes, right? And expensive mistakes doesn't only come in the form of monetary mistakes. It has a whole range of consequences. That human GPS is able to say to you, turn right here. And you're able to make the right decisions to take you on the path of where you want to go. So one of the biggest things that I really want to say to anybody that's listening to this is that you do not have to walk alone. There's a reason why paths are two ways. There's a reason for that. It's because you do not have to walk alone. There are individuals that are out there that have got the necessary skills, the necessary experience and expertise that will be willing to take you along the way with you. So you need to, first of all, take the responsibility to seek them out. And when the opportunity presents itself, make sure that you arrive fully present and ready to apply the knowledge that you will receive from them.
Absolutely. Having a coach or having a mentor is so powerful because, especially if you're starting from a disadvantage, it's really difficult to just step up and be in the environments where the people are that can change your life. But there are people like you. Your content on social media is so valuable. The only difference is the people that consume and the people that apply. Listening to these podcasts, reading the books that you suggested, and following you on social media, the people that actually take action on that will see much different results. And every logical next step will lead you to a mentor, will lead you to an opportunity of finding a coach and having someone in your life that can 10x that journey for you. So I've got another question before we start wrapping it up. If you had to think back to when you were 20, 21, 22 years old, you had to think back to that Hetty. What advice would you give her? What pitfalls to look out for? And what to focus on? Because so many times we just talk about the negative stuff. But if you focus on the good things, they just get better. What advice would you give 20-year-old Hetty today, looking back?
Wow, that is it's really deeply profound because, the interesting thing is when we look retrospectively at our lives and our experiences, we often want to warn our younger self of, be careful of these type of people, be careful of this type of environment, don't take this particular decision. But the interesting thing about that is that without all of those nuances, without all of those speed humps and bumps along the road, etc., one wouldn't have then developed into the person that I am today. And so I really would probably just say to her that life is meant to be lived fully. Love fully. Live fully, laugh wholeheartedly, travel, meet new people, hear different perspectives and points of view, meet new people and have conversations that make you uncomfortable. Go to places that look unfamiliar, read books, entertain different perspectives, have the bravery to just listen and internalize and take in what other people are saying. Just have the bravery to live and embrace life so that we can reach the end of this journey absolutely and completely empty.
Oh, yes. Live full and die empty. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to take that today, and that was a great reminder for me as well. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
We've come to the end of our podcast. I have one more question for you, but before I ask that question, I want to take a moment to acknowledge you for who you are, for the impact that you're making, for how graciously you show up for the world, how giving you are with your knowledge and with your skills, and the profound impact that you've made on not like hundreds of lives, I think thousands of lives, and continuing to make. Thank you for putting in time to not play it small, to learn the skills that you've had to learn, to overcome the things you've had to overcome, so that we can look at you and say, it's possible for me too. So thank you for being that. I know it's crafted. Not all of us just allow that to be. I know you did that on purpose. So thank you for that. The last question that I have is, if there is one thing that our listeners can do to better their everyday lives, what do you think that would be for you?
Wow. One of the biggest things that I am focusing on within this particular season, and I'll share with you and really encourage anyone else to pursue that, is in everything that I do, every decision that I make, every action that I take, any individual that I come into contact with, I ask myself one question: does this bring me peace? That is the main question and fundamental question that I ask myself. And if there is a niggling feeling that it doesn't, if there is a niggling feeling that, oh, I wish I didn't have to do this, or I feel obligated to do this, then I humbly decline. Does this bring me peace? Does this person bring me peace? Does this conversation bring me peace? Does this environment bring me peace? Is the direction in which my life is going, despite it not being perfect, is the direction it's going bringing me peace? Do I feel as though where I am headed to is a place that will bring me peace? And if for any reason whatsoever I don't feel peaceful and comfort within that answer, then I choose myself. I choose differently. Because I've realized that we often at times living our lives according to a template of what we believe we should be doing. And I would like to challenge all of us, and I challenge myself every single day: does this decision bring me peace? And if it does, that is how you know that you're making the right decision.
What a perfect way to end such a powerful conversation. Thank you, Hetty, for your time, for the light that you bring, for the determination and the fun you bring to business as well. And I look forward to having you on the LifeKraft podcast again very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and taking the time to invest in yourself and in your future. If you loved this episode, be sure to share it with us by leaving a positive review or tagging us in a post or in your stories. Share one thing that stood out or inspired you to live your everyday life better. This helps us create more meaningful episodes for you to enjoy. If you're not already following us on social media, be sure to follow @LifeKraft for more inspiration and tools to help you live your most powerful life. And remember, you always have the power to craft a better life for yourself, and we are here to help you do just that. We'll connect again in the next episode, and until then, keep creating a life that you're excited to wake up to. We enjoy bringing you interviews from experts and everyday people so that they can talk about their experiences and share information, tips, and what has worked for them on their journey towards a better life. However, remember that the opinions or advice of our guests and myself, the host, should not be taken as personal, actionable advice and is given as general information and education only. Please always remember to consult a qualified professional before implementing any medical, financial, legal, or other advice that you believe might work for you. LifeKraft is not responsible nor liable for your decision when implementing anything you hear on the podcast. Please listen and act responsibly. The opinions of our guests do not represent the opinions or views of LifeKraft or Melissa Lane personally and are meant as information and general education only. Education only. Education only. Education.